they can be the same thing, okay? Not always, but sometimes so. So in this case, it is both. There's a lack of fusion here. There's also a lack of penetration, okay? Usually where you'll see the difference, incomplete fusion might be in between weld beads, to where it wasn't necessarily penetration, but it was more of a lack of fusion. They just didn't bond together at all. Usually they can be both, and a lot of times they are the same thing, depending on the application. A lot of times on this is a penetration. Here we would say it didn't penetrate into this if we were to see the straight edge as well. Versus a lack of fusion may have just barely laid over the top of the material, but it didn't fuse into it, okay? Or it didn't dig into it enough. Inclusions can be any interrupted, entrapped solid materials not intended to be in the weld joint. Slag, flux, oxide, tungsten, so forth. Anything that's not weld that shouldn't be in there. Okay? In this case, it shows you two pictures of slag caught between passes. They're usually a very dark substance within there as well. When you're looking at an X-ray, talk about certain discontinuities can be surface, subsurface, so forth. Most of them can be surface or subsurface. All right. Underfill, where it just wasn't filled up quite enough. Visual inspection avoids all defects to an extent. I mean, we're not perfect. There are times where we're accidentally possibly going to miss something. Visual inspection, the number one best visual inspector is you as the welder. You are watching it, you are inspecting it as you're welding and as you're cleaning in between passes, okay? If it does not meet a visual requirement right there, stop it, fix it before you move on or weld back over it, okay? Also, it's the most effective and easiest mode of non-destructive testing. Okay, visual inspection is a form of non-destructive testing. You're not breaking it to inspect it, you're just visually inspecting it. And the welder is the very first visual inspector, and then next would be the CWI or your QA manager, whoever is looking over the project as well. Okay, you fix it before somebody else is looking at it. There's certain applications, like on a weld test, you don't have a chance. What we're doing is we're testing to see if you can weld to it, to the code, and produce a sound weld while welding. So for example, on your very top cover pass weld in the real world, if there's a problem there, as a CWI, I may come back and say, we'll grind that out and let's fix it. It's within spec limits, or we may grind it down to be within limits and it'll be fine. It's an as welded position. Now, when you're testing, we're not testing you, we're not weld testing you to make that correction at the end. We are trying to set your skill set and make sure that you're qualified to be able to weld to that code without fixing it. The underlayers, all your other passes, you are allowed to fix, with the exception of your root pass and your cover pass. Your root pass, a lot of times they'll give you one chance to fix it, but you need to put it in, fix it as you're going. If you have a problem, stop, fix it, then continue on. Now your intermediate passes, most codes and procedures will allow you to grind and clean as needed, okay? Not all of them will. There was a few old pipeline procedures where I come from, to where when we would test, we weren't allowed to clean or wire wheel anything. They wanted to test our ability and skill set to be able to clean all the slag out by burning it out and welding. There is a few techniques that you can do it with sodium cellulose downhill rods only, okay? You would never do that with low hydrogen, it's unacceptable. So when you get to a cover pass, when you're weld testing, there cannot be any grind marks on the top. And that goes for our class too, okay? Because we're prepping us to be good welders, okay? Not just fix stuff. I mean, then we're grinders, not welders, okay? We want to, if we're having a problem, we're putting our cover pass in and everything's going good, and we see that we didn't fill in on the side, there's some undercut, stop it right there, grind that section down, and then come back in and weld over top of our grind marks. So when you have a finished weld that I'm going to inspect, or you're going to bring to me, I want to look at it and I don't want to see any grinding marks. If there's grinding marks, then it's a rejectable weld for a weld test. Okay? Make sure that it's only finished welded, or finished weld in the as welded state. Alright? That means you can't grind down the sides or grind your undercut down. If you grind down your sides and grind down the undercut, guess what? You have just taken away from the base metal, and now that is the weak part of your weld. You need to make sure that your weld fills in, your weld material fills in your undercut, not a grinder or a file. Okay? Alright. Right here, the welder's in the best position to do the visual inspection. You've done before, during, and after. Very important. You can do visual inspection the entire time of welding. Before, during welding, afterwards as well. Here's some fillet welds. We'll get a chance to show you how to use them in the future. This is a handheld scanner. Okay, that's the end of chapter 4. Thank you and have a nice day.